Yeah, that's your name.
Squirrels got me.
Big Jim.
Yeah.
Really cold and fun.
Cold and fun.
Cold and fun.
That's good that you think that of it, because that's what deer hunting typically is cold and fun.
Yesterday morning, I'm glassing up on the pass, and I see these deer moving. And I'm like, ooh, there's some deer moving. All of a sudden, I just see this person just head down, just hauling ass, wearing shorts and a T-shirt with a pack on. And I'm like, is that Tard? My dad always talks about floating through the woods like the autumn breeze.
So Robert's
when you're
the
275 pounds, I don't know how you do that, but
the Freightliner. It's just like a creeper. You're just kind of up in the corner watching what's going on down there.
Yeah.
You know.
He's like,
he's up there slapping, pissing all over everything.
Is it warm yet?
How did you know the name of the actor?
That's right. I know.
How did you say his name?
Hervé Villechaize.
You know what pert near means.
If you know what pert near means and you live in America, you're a redneck too.
Welcome to the Log Talk Podcast, brought to you by Pert Near Outdoors. Hey, everybody. It's Billy here. I am sleep deprived, and I am recording an intro for our podcast this week. And I am sleep deprived because we had our baby girl on Friday night, May 8th. So very excited to bring Kate Kirsch Harvey into this world and into these crazy times. But she couldn't have made it easier on her mother and I. I'm sure that won't last for long. But she's beautiful. She's great. She's healthy. Mama's healthy. So everything is good on those fronts. So thank you, everybody, for the kind words and support. We're very happy to add another member to the family. So on this week's episode, we've got Austin Cantola from Genesis 3D Printing. He's a young guy out of Michigan that he's an engineer, and we'll get into kind of the background of his company, but he's doing some really cool things, 3D printing components and different little niche parts and accessories for namely hunting is what he's doing. So he's a very passionate hunter, an engineer, in his professional job, but he started up this business doing 3D printing of such components that we'll get into on here. But I definitely, guarantee. I definitely recommend that you go check him out on Instagram. His website is genesis3dprinting.com, and same thing. So his Genesis 3D Printing on Instagram as well. Check him out. He's doing some pretty cool stuff, and he's very fluid in the fact where somebody throws something out that they're looking for. He's kind of trying to design it up and figure out how it can work and making it happen. So pretty cool, interesting guy, and happy to be helping him grow his following and grow his business as he's just getting up off the ground. So hope you enjoy this episode. I know Danny and I sure did, picking his brain a little bit and learning kind of the ins and outs of why he's doing what he's doing. So that's that for this episode. So I think you will enjoy that. Update on the turkey challenge. That's going very well. We've had a good number of people shoot birds. If you've been listening to our Breeding 'em Radio segment, Jimbo's been doing a nice job of getting everybody on that's harvested birds. So the first week was fruitful from everybody participating. So we had, I think, 6 or 7 different people shoot birds. So we didn't obviously want to have 3 hours worth of stories, so we're kind of breaking that up a little bit. So this week's episode that'll be coming up probably Thursday again, we'll have a couple, 2-3 more stories, and then we'll just keep carrying on throughout the rest of the season and keeping everybody updated. But we did have a bird get shot on Friday morning, I believe it was. That was shot by Nick Scott, so it was the second bird here in New York, and it was a big old bird. So Nick took over the top bird spot with a total score of 45, and that bumped. Let's see here, we've got Andrew Noble is currently sitting in first place with the best spur, and I saw that he shot another bird today, I think. So I have yet to see the measurements there. He may have bettered his bird with his second one, and then with the longest bird, Alexandra Nicole, or Alex, as you would have heard her on Breeding 'em Radio last week. She is currently holding down the longest bird spot, and the top youth bird is currently Dalton Morgan from the youth weekend. So again, having a great time with that challenge, and appreciate everybody playing along with that. And I'm sure I'm forgetting a bunch of stuff, but it doesn't really matter right now. My brain's fried. Just happy to be able to get this episode out on time and enjoy it. Let us know what you think. Share it. Have fun. Stay healthy and have a good week. And keep feeding them. All right. Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode. And today we are joined by Austin Cantola of Genesis 3D Printing. Austin is somebody we've been following for probably a month or two now and seeing some of the cool stuff he's doing with his business. So wanted to get him on the podcast to kind of get his business name out there and talk about what he's doing, as I think it's really unique, and it is something that is growing in popularity in the hunting world, especially in the mobile hunting world. So Austin, thanks for jumping on with Danny and I. How you doing?
Pretty good. Not too bad. Enjoying the beautiful weather here in Michigan.
Is it nice? Are you sending it our way? Because we'd appreciate that.
It was really nice. It started and got a little cold yesterday, so I think we're right around the 35 degrees right now, but it was up in the high 50s the last 2 days, I think.
Yeah.
So
yeah, weather was awesome in March, and then April has been just shit here. And you guys, whereabouts are you in Michigan?
West Michigan area, so kind of like Grand Rapids, just a little bit more northeast or northwest of Grand Rapids, Muskegon area. So
okay, so you get a lot of the same type of weather we do, I think, based off.
Yeah.
You get a lot of weather off of Lake Michigan there.
Yeah, comes in fast and heavy.
It does. Do you guys get lake effect? Are you lined up with the lake enough to get that sort of snow?
Oh yeah. Yep. So it's kind of crazy because where I'm at, it's a small little town called Ravenna, we'll get the lake effects and we'll get a ton of snow really fast or a ton of rain really fast. But the hard part is we don't keep the snow. It just melts within a few days if it gets hot enough. So the ground doesn't get very frozen here. So we'll get a bunch of snow, but then it'll be gone within a few days if it even lasts that long. So
I feel like that's the way the winters have been around here lately too. I mean, we're known in Buffalo for getting pounded with lake effect, but the last few years it's been just like that. Like it's just never gotten cold enough and sustained winter. Winter's been pretty crappy. It's like been longer than normal, and you know, it's freaking April and it was snowing when I walked down here into the basement to start with this. So it's just it's gross. What's it doing, Danny? You got a window seat.
Yeah, I've been looking. It stopped snowing, but I was just cooking some lunch about 10 minutes ago, and there was flurries coming down. So it's been that kind of spring. I was outside doing a ton of yard work yesterday, but not looking good for the rest of the week.
All right, so tell us a little bit about yourself, Austin. I guess, you know, we kind of went over where you're from. You're from West Michigan, but, you know, a little bit about your background in the outdoors. I take it that's a big part of your life, and
for sure.
Run with it.
Yeah. Okay. So, was born on the east side of Michigan, actually, in Sterling Heights. Moved over when I was young, I think I was like 6 or 8 months old, so I don't even really remember that time. But moved over to Ravenna, where my dad is originally from. So he has a family of 5 boys, so 4 brothers, and they were heavily introduced to the outdoors because their mom and dad, so my grandparents, are farmers. So that's a big part of their background. So my dad has been heavily into getting us outdoors, hunting, fishing. So from a young age, living in a small town too, there's not a lot of things other than just go outside and kind of have an adventure. So my dad has immersed us into the hunting, outdoors, and fishing. So we have property in the upper peninsula of Michigan, so we call it the UP over here. So we have hundreds of acres up there that we can go hunt in, and then we have a cabin that's on the Two-Hearted River up in the UP. So we do a lot of trout fishing up there. So getting actually geared up for steelhead fishing this Saturday opens up for us. So that's kind of a big part of my family's background, I guess. So it's pretty much one of those things, like if you're not into it, it's kind of hard to fit in.
Yeah.
So luckily I love it. So, but yeah, that's kind of how I've been so involved in wanting to be outdoors and whatnot. So my dad's an environmental engineer. He has planted trees on the property that he owns. That I actually am his neighbor. I rent from a house from him, and he has I think like 90 acres. And ever since before I was even born, when he was living up in the UP at Sault Ste. Marie he went to school up there. He was planting trees on this property that my grandpa owned, and then he bought for my grandpa. So my dad's been super involved. I mean, he has irrigation going out to his trees and whatnot in the middle of the woods. So
Wow.
it's one of those things like it's in his blood, so it's transferred over to me a little bit. So that's kind of how I've been kind of influenced by him. For me, for my background, I have an engineering. I majored in uh, mechanical engineering technology from a university called Fair State University in Michigan here in Big Rapids. So I went to school there, played football. I was fortunate enough to play on the football team there as a kicker, and went there for 5.5 years, and graduated in 2014 in December. And then I started full time at an engineering place called Gentex Corporation, where we make mirrors for vehicles and whatnot. So that's kind of my engineering backgrounds and my outdoor backgrounds, and they kind of merge together because I love seeing problems and trying to fix them. And I feel like with the mobile hunting industry, there's so much that isn't fixed yet for guys. There's so much of let's just go and let's just do this and get into the nastiest stuff deep in the woods and try to figure it out and be as effective as possible. But I see all these because I've spent a few times trying to figure out how to be more effective in the tree stand or even in a saddle. So I'm geared more towards saddle hunters. But I struggle with knowing that there's a better way to do something. And so when I see that and I'm climbing a tree and I'm like, man, I hate throwing my sticks somewhere on my backpack or on my saddle. It's been one of those things where I got to figure out a better solution for this. So with an engineering background and then wanting to be outdoors, it's kind of pushed me in that direction to start this company called Genesis 3D Printing.
That's pretty cool. So you found an issue that needed to be fixed, or a problem that needed to be fixed, or needed some solutions, and in comes your background in engineering and what you're doing there. And so I guess before we leave that discussion, how's your father as a landlord? Is he pretty rough?
Oh, he's so rough, man. No, it's a blessing. God has blessed us so much, my wife and I. So I have I've been married to my wife for coming on 5 years in July, and we started in our marriage living with a friends, which was great. We got to have a great relationship, but I don't suggest anybody live with their best friends because it's tough. It's really, really tough. So, but no, my dad as a landlord, it's awesome. It's awesome just to be able to go home after work and be able to walk out your back door and start hunting. So
yeah, it's pretty awesome. So let's dive into your business, Genesis 3D Printing then. So when did you get started with this, and what was some of your first projects you started on?
Yeah. So I didn't have a name for my business when I started. It was just more of like, I have a 3D printer and I like creating things, and I got sick of 3D printing stuff that sits on a shelf and looks cool but doesn't do anything. So then I started thinking, what can I use this to be productive and efficient? So my first few products were just tenders for Prusik knots, for lineman ropes, or for your tethered for saddle hunting. So basically, and you could use it for a tree stand too, as you climb up your lifeline or your lineman rope. It basically just tends your hitch, and so eliminates the need to have a mechanical ascender like a Ropeman one or something like that. So I just started making these for myself and a friend that I work with here at Gentex, and he and I were talking about it. And I'm like, man, I feel like people are spending way too much money on these mechanical ascenders. I feel like I can come up with this solution and just provide it as an option for guys. So I posted it and shared it with guys, and immediately people were very interested in it. And so I started fine tuning the design and selling those. But I think that was like right before I went to Missouri last year for hunting. And because when I was in Missouri, I remember I was sitting in the tree and my phone was blowing up with people asking for them. And I was selling them for, I think, $10 to their door. Whereas a mechanical center can be upwards of $50 to $45. So that was kind of how I started back in like early November, late October of last year.
Huh. So how does that thing work? Because I have a tethered saddle, and
Mhm.
so I'm looking at the picture of this. That's that little what do you call it? The
Figurator.
figurator. Yeah. So how does that
Yep.
work?
Yep. So what you basically do is you have your setup of your rope, and you have your hitch going from your carabiner back to your line, your rope line or whatever. And the figurator or the tender will one hole will go into your carabiner, and then the other hole is where your tag end to your rope goes into. So basically, all you do to move your knot or your hitch up and down your rope is you pull your tag end tight, like you pull it out towards your side. It's hard to explain without actually seeing it, but
Yeah.
if you pull your tag end, it pushes your figurator, and which then pushes the Prusik hitch or the other hitch or whatever hitch you want to use. So yeah, it's pretty nifty. There's other ways to do it. Yeah, so there's other ways that guys have come up with different creative solutions, and that's the one thing about my business is I'm not creating the end all solution that everybody needs to have. I'm just creating options for guys. So
Yeah.
It looks like it's kind of creating like a lever on your Prusik knot to basically adjust it quickly up or down. It's really cool.
yeah, and that's the thing. Like knowing, like with my engineering background and knowing like ropes and stuff like that, really to loosen a Prusik hitch, you have to push the knot, not pull the knot. The pulling makes it lock up. To loosen up the hitch, you actually have to push the knot up or push it down, depending on if you're getting slack or whatnot. So that's really all it's doing. It's the lever arm pushing that knot. So I actually run it's funny because with a figurator, I started with the Prusik hitch one. And then some guy said, hey, you should make one that works for this style hitch, which is a distal or a Swabish. And I was like, oh, okay. So it's easy to design up, but I did it and I tried it out and I was like, holy moly, this thing is way better.
That's fascinating. And so Danny and I were both, like, last year I got into saddle hunting. I had it for the whole season, used it quite a bit and loved it, a tethered saddle. And Danny's getting into it, and so we're both very interested in the mobile hunting side of things. But like these little things, like it's such a simple little tool, and it's just so cost effective. But it's cool because that's where your engineering background, taking an issue and taking something that wasn't, the only fix was a super expensive fix, and here you are 3D printing, which is just, to just normal, numbskulls like Danny and I, like the ability for you to do that is just, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So you made that little figurator.
Yep.
And then when I think we kind of started jumping on and following you, it looked like you've really started honing in on making accessories to help carry different types of sticks and different platforms to hook them onto your molly loops on your whatever type of saddle you're using.
Yep. Yeah, that's the thing. Like I started with the figurators, and then I moved into the bow hanger system that was on any type of gear hanger. And the goal with that one was to create a solution that could work with a one inch strap, the tethered, I think they call it his strap or his strap. I don't know how to pronounce it.
The his strap, yeah.
Yeah. So the goal with that one was to be able to work with paracord, the tethered one, or even just a 1 inch strap. And so that one, because I looked at the problem as like for a public land legal bow hanger, there's not really much out there that's effective and efficient, that's light and also doesn't take up much room. I think those bow hangers are less than 2 ounces. That's how much I weighed them at, because I have to ship them, so I have to know how much they weigh to ship them. So that's the thing. Like with those, it's been crazy. So I started with that after the new year, and that's when I started my business of like, this is an LLC, this is all this stuff, making it official. And then I started moving into like how to hang your sticks from your saddle, or even if you're a tree stand hunter, if you have any sort of belt, you can just slide my stuff into your belt too. So that's the other side of it. It doesn't have to be only saddle hunting, but it's geared more towards saddle hunters because of molly webbing.
Yeah, that bow hanger that thing's sweet. Because the other thing I see, most of what people are using for bow hangers on any types of, quote unquote public land or non screw in type of hanger is they're just using like those like S beaners and they have like open ends.
Yeah.
So then you're really not, your bow's not, or your gun is not hanging nicely from the tree. It's kind of, I would have to imagine it would be kind of like hanging awkwardly, and then to get it off in the moment when you need to get your bow or get your gun, like you're having to like kind of lever that thing off. Whereas with yours, it's like a legitimate hanger like you would have if you were screwing into the tree. So
yeah, it's designed for bow hanging for specifically instead of just some carabiner that works for it.
Yeah. So explain how does the 3D printing work? Because I get the gist of it, but so you design something in your computer and then it prints it out with plastic essentially? Is that how it does that?
Correct. So the whole process is basically I come up with a design in a software, and it doesn't matter what software you use, any 3D design software. So I create this design in the software, and then I save a certain type of file, which then I can take that file and then I can create what they call G code. And G code is basically just it's like a racetrack almost. It's telling the printer where to go. So if you think of like X, Y, and Z coordinates, it's basically telling the printer, okay, go from this coordinate to that coordinate and spit this much plastic out at this amount rate, this flow. It sounds kind of complicated, but once you start immersing yourself in it, it's really not too crazy. I mean, I say that because I have an engineering background, so I love it. And my mind's wired that way, so everybody should think it's easy. But no, the best way I've ever been able to explain it is if you take a hot glue gun and you load that up and start squirting stuff out of the nozzle, that's pretty much what 3D printer is for FDM, which is what I have. It's fused, I can't really remember what it is, but it's basically just molten plastic that you're precisely laying down in a pattern. And so, yeah, that's pretty much what the printer's doing is I tell it where to go through a certain type of file, and it just goes out there. And then there's certain types. The hard part with anybody is, like, I've seen a few people start 3D printing stuff and start using it and even sending it to guys. But the big thing about it is you need to know that you're using good filament, is what they call it, good plastic. So if you use what they most popular is called PLA, it's actually like a starch, like a sugar-based plastic. It's super easy to work with, super easy to print, but it's super brittle and whatnot. So what I've used is just an ABS plastic, which is what you see, like most of your furniture or cars have that type of plastic in them. Super strong, but it does allow a little bit of bend, but it won't just shatter on you. So that's kind of the 3D printing process.
So you're starting to engage with people, and I'm seeing that folks are sending you stuff as far as like sending you their sticks or sending you a platform that they have that you may not have personally, so that you can actually, start making, whether it be hangers or some kind of accessory for it. So how do you see that working as you move forward with your business? Do you kind of see that being how you get more products out there is really just engaging with people and finding out what they're interested in so you can get accessories for them?
Yeah, that's been, I mean, with it being a small business and not having a lot of income right out the get-go to get stuff purchased, that's the hard part is I don't have all the money in the world to go spend on all these products, and there's some really expensive stuff out there. So, and the nice thing is I've been actually using the community to be a part of my business and using them to say, hey, what do you guys want to see? Does anybody have this out there? And I've been really fortunate enough that people have been engaged, and it's cool because I think what has been generated by this is people feel like they're part of the business because they're sending me their stuff and they're actively talking to me and sending me ideas, and we're discussing it. It's not like somebody sends me an idea and I'm like, that's not a good idea, and throw it in the trash. Like, I'm treating every idea as gold pretty much because it really has the potential. I mean, that's the plan that I've been using. And I kind of took it, I believe the book, I'm going to look it up real quick, is called The Spider and the Starfish and the Spider. It's an awesome book that somebody that I work with here at Gentex recommended, one of our VPs. and it's all about like leaderless organizations and getting, how do they get going, like Napster and all these like pirated movies and videos, and how they flourished. And it's because people are just coming together as one group, and there's not one central leader that people look to. So that's kind of, I've taken bits out of that book and applied it to my business, and that's kind of how it's been going for me, and it's been awesome. It's hard because I have all these ideas coming at me, and I'm the only one designing stuff and printing them off. So that's the hard part. There has been some guys that have reached out, like companies that have reached out. Like Latitude Outdoors is a saddle company that's going to be coming here soon. I think it's in May is when they're going to officially release their saddle, which I ran all last year, which was an awesome saddle. I'm excited for them, but they actually reached out to me and asked me if they could partner with me. But I didn't see it as I wasn't seeing the benefit for joining them. And it kind of went against what my business model is right now. It is, hey, I'm engaging the public and asking them, what do you guys want to see and whatnot. So guys that send me their platforms or their sticks, they get them back and they get like a whole goodie bag of all my stuff that I design and print. So I think that they're enjoying sending me stuff that help them out.
Yeah. I think you made the right decision there. I think, partnering is always a good thing, but you also, like, we are so far from, we're not even a business. We're just a group of guys that like the outdoors and doing a podcast. But, it's as soon as you start partnering, you start losing control of what you've started, what you've created, and what you're doing, and talking about the book that you read and some of the principles and ideas of that, like, that's building a community that's having, people empowered to be part of something, to, make a product, make a good. So like, yeah, I think you made the right decision there for sure. Because as soon as you start partnering with somebody, you start losing control of, if you want to go this way, you got to ask somebody if you can go that way. And, there's goods and bads to that, but, more power to you for staying true to yourself, especially this early on. It's very easy to jump at that stuff.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So Danny, what sort of stuff, I know you're always a question guy. What do you got in your mind that you want to know from us?
Oh man, I got a little bit of everything. I love the sticks. You got a really cool kind of stick holder that goes on the back of your saddle belt. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Oh, the one I just kind of released, kind of in a way a soft release. I'm calling it the stick mule system. That's the cool thing about what I've done with like my business model of engaging the public is I suck with coming up with names, and words are not my friend. So I've actually engaged the community and said, hey, this is my system that I'm working on, and come up with a name for me. Best person with the best name gets a product for me. And so I'm kind of, I'm deferring that stuff to the public, and it's been kind of fun to watch things come through. My wife and I look through the names and we're just like, holy moly, that's a good one. So yeah, I'm calling it the stick mule system. And then I actually took somebody else's suggestion and have a tagline with it: stick, stack, stow, and go. So the concept of it is basically you would stack your sticks, and I created this clip that goes on your top stick or your second stick, whatever stick you want to snap it onto. And it has a designed-in Versa button in it, which then will pair up with one of my Versa hangers, which that Versa hanger is just a hook with a recessed channel in it to allow the Versa button on a stick to go in and slide down. So I took that concept and just said, I'm just going to make a male version to receive into this. So then you can just slide all your stack of sticks on your back of your saddle. Or even if you use a combat belt, which a lot of guys actually are starting to use that for really light mobile setups. And I actually ran one last year and I really liked it because it takes the weight off of your butt almost, and it puts it above your hips. So when you use the combat belt, and I've tested this out, you don't even realize it's back there. And it's funny because I know, like, cause I've tested it and walked through our woods and went climbing through some thick stuff just for testing this out, which was really strange, but I put myself through the ringer for that. But you really just don't even know what's back there until you get to your tree and you're like, oh, I got to take this off now. So that's kind of the concept for those guys that just don't want to wear a backpack and just want to throw their sticks on their saddle and just go. Yeah, that's been awesome. It was crazy though, because I had this idea, and my first design iteration was just some hooks that would slide into your MOLLE webbing. Then you could pull the whole system off with the sticks. But I noticed when I was testing it and climbing through some thick stuff, if I hit it on something, it would just pop out of my saddle or my MOLLE webbing. And I was like, that's not good. And then I then came up with the next solution was, well, what if I just hook it in like my platform hangers and then just unsnap the hooks, the sticks from those hooks. And then I was like, well, that seems kind of wasteful because you're leaving those on your saddle now and they're not being used for anything. So then I was like, well, what if I just reuse the Versa hangers when I get to my tree? So it's almost like it's like a 3-in-1 package because you're using it to walk out the woods, you're using it to climb, and then you also could use it to manage your Amsteel daisy chain or Amsteel whoopee sling or whatever. So yeah, it's been a tough one to figure out, and a lot of walking through the woods for no reason other than testing, which is nice because with a stay-at-home order here in Michigan, there's not much you can do. So I'll take advantage of that.
Yeah. Yeah, it almost looks like it could even work on a backpack from what I'm kind of seeing. If you had a strap going horizontal, like it's for somebody that wants to have easy access to 3 or 4 sticks that are together. You don't even need to be a saddle hunter. You could just be a mobile hunter with a stick set up. And I know I like running my backpack just because I get cold easy, so I'm bringing clothes in and things like that. So to be able to have those like at my back, and one of the things that I really want is access to them without having to take my pack off. And I can see that working where they're mounted onto your back, onto a strap, and you can easily just pull them up vertically and pop them out, and you have access to them with this hanger.
For sure. With that design, I almost killed myself trying to come up with there was one other design feature I wanted on these is like you can stack them, all your sticks would receive into each other, similar to like the Hawk Heliums with the suction cup idea. And my next iteration of this design or my next rollout will have something that allows you to do that. But I've struggled with, because there's so many different sticks on the market, and trying to figure out what's the best design solution for all of them and whatnot. So I'm still working through that, but I think with the other Versa button that I told you that you could use for managing your Amsteel chains, or using something like a strap that you would have holes that you could snap into, and then just unsnapping one at a time. Because that's another, like what you were saying, is you could just unsnap a stick as you start climbing. Then you can just leave them on your backpack. That's my end goal with that system, is be able to basically, because this is my theory, when I get to a tree, I want to start climbing right away. I don't want to take everything off and start managing it. I just want to hit the tree and start going. So that's kind of my goal, is to be able to set somebody up for success to be able to do that. At least myself. If I can't come up with something for everybody, I'll at least get something for myself out there.
That's the beauty of being the sole owner and operator, sir. You can do whatever the hell you want. So on those stick hangers, the clips that go on your belt, you put your stick into, will they work on? Because Danny and I both have Hawk Heliums. Will they work with the Heliums? Will the Helium receive into it?
Yeah, so I do have a version for the Hawk Heliums, the Versa hangers, that's large enough to fit that Versa button from the Hawk Heliums. So I do have one that will work for the Hawk Heliums for sure. The Stick Mule system only works for 1-inch tubing style sticks right now.
Yeah.
But I do own some. Well, I don't own them. I'm borrowing them from somebody that I know that I work with that owns a pair of the new style Hawk Heliums. My end goal with that is to come up with a solution where you could take the suction cups off and use my own stacking system that's a little bit more low profile and a little bit more rigid instead of kind of wobbled and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's the one thing I see with the suction cups. I did not have them pop out last year when I was climbing the tree. But like the way when I'm using my saddle going up the tree, I didn't have them hanging off my belt. I had them I had the 3 sticks stuck together. I put the first stick on the tree, and then I start climbing up, and I have 2 sticks still stuck together with the rope around my neck on the one side, and then I have my platform hanging off around my neck from the other side, loose but hanging down, and then I'm popping off the stick off with the suction cups, and I know that is not the best way to do it, but I kind of got into a routine and a rhythm, and that worked well once I got to doing it. But seeing what you're doing and being able to put those like nicely and tightly onto your hip belt, that would be a way better way of doing it than having the stuff slung around your neck for obvious reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But
that's the crazy thing is I started testing my stuff out for climbing, and outside of the stick mule system, just using like the stick clips, which are clip onto 1-inch tubing and then they slide into your saddle, or the Versa hangers. I'm able to get up a tree in like 5 to 6 minutes, whereas I've never been able to do that with like what you're talking about, doing something similar to that, where you just have straps everywhere or sticks everywhere, platform wherever you could fit it while it's keeping it out of the way as you start climbing. And like you said, is you get better at it once you start practicing more. And that's the same with my system. I mean, I feel like if you practice enough, you can become even more efficient than 5 to 6 minutes. So
no doubt. What other questions you got, Danny? I know you're still stewing.
I got.
You had a mile.
I'm interested. So what are you using when you go into the field? So could you just walk through your setup, saddle to even bow if you want? What are you taking in with you, and what of your stuff are you using? Because I'm sure there's certain things that might replace other things depending on what kind of thing you're doing that day.
Yeah. So my setup is I'm a guy that gets cold. So I usually carry a backpack with me. So I'm a small dude. I mean, I'm 5'10", 175 when I'm wet. So I carry a backpack with some heavy stuff in it. The sticks that I used last year were just some custom built sticks that I made myself. I actually 3D printed the standoffs for them, which worked pretty dang well. But I since went away from that just from I would like to stay alive for a little bit longer. So this coming year, the nice thing about being able to get all this product like sticks, platforms that are readily available on the market, I can find sticks that I would have never bought because they're way too much money. And now I'm like, oh, I have all the sticks ever made, and I can test them all out and see which ones fit my style. So I ended up keeping or buying the B sticks. So I'll be using 3 of those paired with a Swader and Nader. That's what I used, and I've used Wild Edge steps too, so I could use those too. Unfortunately, I don't have a solution for climbing with those right now that is efficient and what I would say is effective. So that's kind of my setup. I'll be using like a B stick, or my custom sticks were the same length as the B stick. They're almost identical. So that's my stick setup. The bow I shot last year was a Elite Z28, which I love that bow. Almost sold it to make up money because I bought a Gearhead B24, and then I sent it back to Gearhead to have them replace the cams on it to put it into a D24. So that's kind of the bow I'm switching to, but I'll keep the Z28 because that bow is awesome, and I've never had any issues with it. Shot a lot of nice deer with it. But yeah, and I have a Badlands backpack. I think it's called the Diablo Dos. Really like that backpack. It's really lightweight, can pack a bunch of stuff in there, but also not too much, because I feel like if you have a big enough backpack, you'll just stuff whatever you can fit in there. Mm-hmm. So I limited myself with that. So the platform I ran last year was just a cam over seat style platform. But I'll be playing around with other platforms this year. I have a Predator platform that so far I really like that one. No issues with it at all. But I think with me getting like the Podium and the Ridge Runner from guys and the Ambush. I don't really care for the Ambush. It doesn't fit my style. I can't get that thing to cam over really well. But I think I'll fine tune what platform I like the most. So that's kind of my setup. I mean, I use my figure eighters to climb with, so I'm running a Swabish hitch on my lineman and my tethered. Those if you haven't tried those hitches, they're phenomenal compared to a Prusik. They're super easy to move. They're just, it doesn't even feel like you have a hitch on there when you start taking slack out of your rope. So yeah, my style, like I said, my style of hunting is I want to get to a tree and start climbing. I don't want to take it all off and get dressed or whatnot. I want to hit the tree and just start going. So, but
Can you dive into what you said the platform you were using this past year was like a cam over seat style platform? Can you explain what that is? Because I'm wondering if it's similar to what I'm using, and I think Danny is going to be using too.
Yeah, so it's just a XOP or Lone Wolf seat, and off one of their tree stands on a 1-inch tubing, and it has two small style platform standoffs. And basically, you can use like a ratchet strap, but I used like an over the center cam buckle. I think it's OCB or whatever. Can't remember what it's called, but you're able to get that strap really tight, and all you do is you take your platform and you just hold down on it with the strap being below your platform when you start pulling down on it, and it'll just cam over and then snap into place. It seemed like it worked. It's a great style platform for anybody that's trying to get into it, into saddle hunting, but not break the bank, because you can make them for relatively cheap or find them used for relatively cheap. There's a safety concern there because the seat isn't designed obviously for a platform. But from my engineering background, I looked at it and I felt like I was safe enough for my size body. I mean, I'm 175 when I'm soaking wet, so for me, I was not concerned with it. But I think the reason why I'm switching away from it is just because I feel like I can be more efficient with a style like the Predator platform or even the Podium and whatnot. So it just seems like it's more efficient.
Yeah, I agreed. I mean, I think it's a super cost-effective way to get into it. I'm running the Hawk Hangout tree seat, and I actually just left it the way it was. I just used it as a tree seat, but I would put it up and just suspend it up in the tree with me when I got up there with with my saddle, and I was very happy with it. The only issue that I found, and you would understand this probably way better than I would, leverage-wise and mechanical, how it wants to pull away from the tree, but as a, with the seat at the top of that tube that it's on, the 1-inch tube or the 1.5-inch tube it's on, it wants to kind of like pull away from the tree. So I'm going to mod that. I think I talked to Dallas, and Dallas is one of my buddies, my wife's cousin, and he's going to take it to work and tap some new holes in it at the bottom of that tubing, so that the seat, the platform is actually at the bottom instead of being at the top, to kind of change that leverage. I think it'll hold on the tree a lot better. But I mean, the thing worked great. I put some hockey tape on it and to kind of quiet it down a little bit around the platform, and I've been super happy with it for $25.
I know.
So I have two of them. Danny just bought one off Camel Fire today. They had them on sale, and I think they work pretty good. Now, as far as quietness and lightweight and packability, like that's not what they're designed for. So it's not as nice as a Predator platform that weighs very little. It's similar in weight, but it weighs very little, and it folds up tight and doesn't make a ton of noise. Like, that's where the downfalls are of using the tree seat for it. But it works. Like, at the end of the day, it's inexpensive and it works.
Gets the job done.
Yeah.
It's not a Summit climber either. That's 35 pounds.
No. Yeah, that's the thing about saddle hunting is you look at the community and how it started, and Saddle Hunter, the forum or whatever, there's so much DIY stuff on there. It's crazy. It's hard to keep up with all of it and whatnot. So there's so many different ways you can do it. Like last year when I went to Missouri, I actually used a ring of steps that like a guy that I work with, we both kind of came up with this design and we 3D printed it. And that's all I used out of the tree is I printed 5 steps and I started hunting with them. But you're right about where your strap or where your platform is on the top of the step or top of the stick versus bottom. It's so much, there's so much different than for like the ring of steps, the strap being above where the step is at. If it's like above the strap, if your step is above the strap, it's so hard to get that strap tight enough to not have it pull away from the tree. Like the Bullman tree steps, my dad owns a few of those and I've tried those and I just didn't feel comfortable because you're putting all your pressure leverage above the strap. You want it below the strap, which I think you'll find that when you get your seat modified, it's going to be night and day difference.
Yeah.
So
maybe I'll send one of them out to you because I have 2 of them. Send one to you and have you help me design something to like some kind of a system to hold it shut so that because that's my problem when I'm traveling. You know, like when it's on my pack, you know, it wants to fold up and move around. You know, so something where you could, you know. For the one-off guy, the one guy in Buffalo, the 2 guys in Buffalo that use the Hawk Hangout as their platform, you know, let's have you dump 40 hours into that $4 piece of printing out.
You'd be surprised. There's probably more guys that do it. So
probably, if they're not, they should because it's pretty cost effective.
It is.
What else you got, Danny? Anything?
Good question. You get up to the tree and you run in the like assist strap or whatever they're from tethered with a couple different hangers, a bow hanger and a pack hanger. Guess that would be my next question.
Okay. Yeah, last year I used a 1-inch strap and it was just like a cheap old plastic buckle one that you can get off Amazon. This coming year, I'll still stick with like a 1-inch strap or maybe even a paracord tied with a Night Eyes Cam Jam. Those things, you can get them on Amazon for like $10, the metal ones. Those things are really, really nice. And they pack down next enough. And the only concern, I haven't played with it enough that I might see that it gets kind of tied into knots and whatnot. So I actually prefer the 1-inch strap over like the tethered one, just because if you ever have seen this strap, it just is so much strap. There's so much bulk there that it's nice. Don't get me wrong. I think it's awesome as a gear hanger, but I just don't think it fits well with what I prefer to have. I don't want to fill my dump pouch up with my gear strap. I'd rather be able to fill it up with snacks because I love snacking in the tree. But so I envision myself either using the Night Eyes paracord if I like that enough, so it's not getting tight in the knots, or just a 1-inch strap with a carabiner and just a buckle that can cinch tight. So that's kind of my view on it. I don't know. It just depends on what people like. I mean, the tethered one's nice because you can clip carabiners in it and hang your stuff from it super easy, and it works really well for that. So that's kind of my setup. I didn't really go over the saddle. I can't really talk much about the saddle that I'm using because I signed a NDA with the company. It's the Method saddle. It's super innovative, and that I'm super excited. It's unfortunate that this whole coronavirus hit because it kind of slowed their production stuff down because their supplier had to switch over to making PPE stuff. So, but the saddle is legit, and I'm excited, and because they're from Michigan, so I'm excited to support some Michigan guys. But yeah, I was able to harvest my biggest buck in my lifetime with that saddle this fall. So it's been a fun ride with that saddle. So I'm excited to see it hit the market.
Yeah, that's awesome. Are you doing mostly? You said you got a bunch of public land or private land. You do much public, or stick to your dad's land for deer and whatever else you're out for?
Yeah, so in Michigan, I've been blessed with a lot of acreage that's public, private. So I just stick to that when I'm in Michigan. I have my in-laws, my father-in-law hunts a lot of public land up north by like Manistee National Forest area, up by like Traverse City area. So I'll when I go up to visit him, I'll maybe go out once or twice a year and hunt with him out there, or just go hunt by myself. I haven't done much more with that. I want to, because it's the thrill of, you watch all these hunting YouTube channels now, like the Hunting Public, and it inspires you to want to go hunt private or public land, even if I have all this private land to hunt. So that's the funny thing, is like they're almost wanting the private guys to go and hunt that public land. But that's when I'm in Michigan, I'm mostly hunting just private land, just because I'm able to walk out my back door and start hunting. But we did have a lease that we were just really good friends with this guy who owned a pretty decent chunk of property in Missouri, and we ended up not being able to hunt that anymore because he ended up selling it. So now when we go to Missouri, we've been hunting public land, and that's been fun. It's challenging. Last year, especially because there was a lot of diseases that kind of hit the area that we were in, so there wasn't a lot of deer running around. But man, it's fun just making memories with your family and going down there with my 2 cousins and whatnot, just running and gunning, going in the thickest, nastiest crap, and getting some scars, even if you don't get a deer when you come out that night. it's a lot of fun.
It's the best.
Mm-hmm.
Go to tree stand snack. Gotta have it. Your favorite?
My go-to tree stand snack, man, I don't know what it is, but I love Cheez-Its. Man,
It's a good choice. They're a little noisy. But
yeah. Or you can go with the Aldi brand and go with the Savorites if you guys have all these out in New York. Those are good too. Yeah.
We try to keep the Cheez-Its out of the household here because I will eat a whole box in a sitting. So
Yeah, it doesn't take very long.
no, it doesn't. Let's hear as we kind of start. We're approaching an hour. We're at 50 minutes. I'd like to hear the story about that big buck you shot this past year. I saw the picture. That thing was a giant. So love to hear the story about that.
Yeah, so the history of the buck started with my uncle, who is kind of close to us property wise, and he had a lot more history with the buck because it lived on his property pretty much all of its life. And then for some odd reason, this last summer, it switched and started living on our property, and we call it the Big 8 because it's just a massive 8-point. And actually, we had tons of camera pictures, had sign all over the place with him. We actually figured out where he was bedding. We had like rub line coming right out of his bedding back out to the field. And my dad was hunting early season, and my sister was too. And they both saw him come out of his bedding into this field on 2 different days. And I was like, okay, what was similar and whatnot? They figured out that it was the wind, or I figured out that the wind was coming out of the south. So it was going right into his face, and he felt comfortable coming out, but he wasn't coming out till like literally right at dark. And so my first encounter with him getting in the bow range, I missed. I actually shot underneath him. And I was so mad because he came out and I could see him in the woods, and he was with another big buck that we have seen on camera. And he sat in the wood. He came out 35 minutes before dark and just sat there in the woods, just waiting. And he was stupid smart, but he probably has been shot at tons of times. So he's not stupid. So he just sat there and waited and waited and waited. And he was like 25 yards from me in the woods behind thick stuff. And I just sat there and waited. And then he came out, and I thought he was at like 27, 28. He ended up being like, because he was walking on a pretty severe angle away from me, being closer to like 38, almost 40 by the time I got him to stop. And it's crazy how fast you can get him moving, or to get deer moving, and you don't realize how many steps they took. So I shot underneath him. A few weeks later, my dad also shot underneath him. Like, and at this time, like, we're telling my uncle, like, we shot at this thing twice, and he's like, that deer's gone. He's coming my property. And we're just like, well, we had our chance, I guess. And then luck kind of changed, and I went out I think it was the Friday after Thanksgiving, or Friday. It was gun season. I went out with my bow, and I was sitting on a little food plot, and I heard a doe kind of coming through, a little doe fawn. I looked, and I was like, well, I'll pull back and get practice on this doe fawn. And then I saw a small 6-point after that. And I was like, I'll wait for the 6-point to come out the practice just to pull back. I'm not going to shoot. And I heard the 6-point get really close to me. I was like, man, that thing is not 50 yards away from me anymore. That thing's like right next to me. And I looked and it was him. He was like 15 yards away from me in the woods. And I was like, holy crap. So then I just was like, well, I guess I'm doing this for real now. And I'm just pulling back. So then he stepped out into my lane and he was 22 yards from me and I hit him a little high and a little back. And he took off and he actually ran in the woods and crashed. And my dad was hunting 75 yards away from me in the woods. He ran right towards my dad. I texted my dad and I'm like, I just shot the big 8. And he's like, I heard him crash in the woods. He's down. And so then I got down and just wanted to look for blood and see what kind of blood I was getting. And then my dad, he called me and he said, you won't believe it, but the big 8 just walked within 8 yards of my tree stand and I couldn't get a shot at him. And I was like, are you kidding me? And so then basically my dad tried to grunt at him and he freaked out and ran into the corn and crashed and whatever. And so we sat on it for a night, even though I really want to go out and just start looking because I was like, you never know. I ended up tracking all Saturday morning, even brought out a dog, went on to 5 different neighbors' properties and couldn't find him. And then kind of just gave up in a way. And then my uncle almost a week later was picking a cornfield and the deer was in the cornfield. And so that was pretty much the end of the story. The crazy thing is he did a huge J hook, if you want to call it a J hook, but a big, huge U over probably 6 or 7 properties to get back to where I shot him.
So
he ended up dying in the
he was pretty close to where you shot him?
Yeah, he was within 200 yards.
Oh my God.
200 to 300 yards. So like homebody for him he was a homebody at this last year. He stuck on our property. It was crazy. I've never seen that, never heard of it. I've always been told once you get a shot at a deer and you don't make it happen and they know that you're there, they're gone. But this guy, I don't know. It was just crazy. He just felt safe on our property. We didn't hunt a lot. We didn't put a ton of pressure on him. But even with the pressure, he still felt comfortable there. So he ended up dying in a cornfield 50 yards behind my grandma's farm. and my uncle was just picking the corn and whatnot. So the arrow was still in him. We found out that it hit a rib, ricocheted up, and went through the spinal cavity and stuck in the spinal cavity. And then when he got back to the corn, it paralyzed him probably, and he just laid down. So it's and that was a tough kill to swallow, but it's with your bow hunting, you're going to have kills like that, and you can't avoid it sometimes. But it's caused me to be smarter and figure out the problem was that I didn't get good enough penetration, and I'm doing a lot of heavy arrow testing right now to see if I can just blow through the rib instead of redirecting and going in a direction I didn't expect it to.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I appreciate you telling that story the way it is, because I'm pretty sure anybody who's hunted can relate to that. And, you're fortunate enough that you guys ended up finding the deer, so at least you had closure to that whole story. But
yeah,
stuff happens. I mean, it's not a perfect deal. I think just about everybody who's hunted, I've lost deer, I've missed deer, I'll continue to miss deer and lose deer. Like you don't ever want it to happen, but again, thank you for telling that, and congratulations on that deer. I mean, that deer is a giant, and to see you sitting behind him with a big smile, after you guys found him a week later, like that's it probably had to feel pretty damn good to at least know here he is, here's what happened, and and you can better yourself and try to correct that stuff.
Yeah, and that was a crazy thing. It was super unfortunate. I had a hard time swallowing it and sleeping after it, even after we found him, because I mean, the meat was still salvageable. We didn't lose any meat on him. He was still fine, which was the craziest thing.
So the coyotes didn't get into him?
No, he was still alive in the cornfield. We had to put him down.
Oh, he was still alive. Okay.
Yeah.
So he was paralyzed. So he was there and couldn't go anywhere.
He just couldn't go anywhere.
Wow.
So that was the other part of it that made it even harder to
he
swallow
was suffering.
that. Mm-hmm.
That's pretty weird. So he stayed alive for almost a week then.
Yeah.
Wow.
With an arrow in him and everything. Crazy. So
I had a similar experience myself. A deer that it was actually my first buck. We had posted pictures back last week of our first bucks, and my dad hit that deer with his bow during archery, and then I hit him the first Sunday of gun season. Both were not good shots, and we lost the deer. And a full week later, I found him bedded up where I heard something and just passed it as, another deer jumped up on the side hill. Ended up being him laying there, and I just so happened I wanted to check it out on Thanksgiving morning, and I walked up, and I was still hunting the cross above him, and I ended up seeing the deer bedded, and he was in such bad shape from the injury he had from me the week before that he was just laid up there lame. Like he didn't have the energy to get up. It was not a gloryful situation. And, of course, I scoped myself and I shot him. I think I shot at that deer. I shot 3 times at him laying there, and he was not moving. He wasn't flinching. He wasn't anything.
Crazy.
And I'm like, and on the 3rd shot, I scoped myself, and I'm looking through my scope, and he's probably under 80 yards. I don't remember exactly how far it was, but he's bedded on a little bench in the pines, and I'm looking in the scope, and I can see behind the shoulder where I hit him, and I'm like, what is going on? I'm like, this deer's not dying, So I just turned, and I was so upset. It was my first buck that I had actually hit, and I turned and I walked away. I walked up the hill, and just wanted to get away from the situation for a few minutes, and I came back, and he had flipped over and rolled down the hill and died, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes later. But it's like those are hard situations, and you never want them to be that way. But that's just the way it works sometimes. It's not you're killing something, you're taking its life, and there's some struggles that can come with that. But
it taught me a lot. I actually learned. I think you learn more through those failures than you do for the successes. Like, because those successes, you're like, I did it. I was perfect in a way. With the failure, I was like, man, I need to fix this. I created a huge list of things that I want to work on this spring, summer, preparing myself for that opportunity to show up again and being ready to take a deer and watch him. Like, I've had deer that I've taken and they ran 30 yards or 50 yards and they fell, and those are awesome. I want to have those happen every time. So how do I get that to happen and whatnot? So
100%.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I gotta get this thing wrapped up. I'm being summoned for baby duty upstairs. So, so why don't you give a quick rundown on where people can find you and how they can shop for your products and get in touch with you?
Yeah, so you can reach me. I have a Facebook page. It's just Genesis 3D Printing. Instagram account, same thing, Genesis 3D Printing. And then where you can buy my stuff at is genesis3dprinting.com. So same name, 3 different locations. But if you want to buy stuff, I created a Shopify website. You can just go there and check out all the stuff.
Awesome. I definitely. What was that? What the hell that was? Spend your stimulus check with this young man out of Michigan. Keep that money in the U.S. So
yeah.
Got anything in closing, Danny?
No, I'm pretty good. I've got tons of questions. I could keep going here for hours, but I got to get back to work. So.
Yeah, well, this won't be the last time we'll talk to you, Austin. We'll stay in touch. And maybe we'll get you back on at some point and see what else is happening, what's new with you, or maybe see what's growing in your neck of the woods for deer come deer season. So.
Yes, that sounds good to me. This is my first podcast, so I'm excited to do more.
Hell yeah, man. Appreciate it. Appreciate you being on.
Yep.
All right, buddy. Thank you. Stay healthy and keep feeding them.
You too, guys. See ya.
It's fun here.